All right, we're back for episode 2.
Welcome back. This is the Science of the Strike
Science of the
podcast.
Strike. I still don't know if I love that name. Behind the Bite was taken, though. Okay, we're trying to be a little better with our mics this time. I think we were a little too close last time. So, episode 2, we are focusing on scent. I took the route of doing like smell, fish's ability to actually like smell, whereas Sam, I think, did more like taste.
Yep. Taste.
So we were actually talking just before we started recording that there's obviously, just like there was with color, a significant amount of information out there about scent, albeit a lot of it is old information. But I honestly think a lot of the information that we get, just like color, is wrong about scent. Um, Being misled by advertising and marketing. Understandably, like I get it, and I'm not saying it's all a hoax, but I think a lot of it is.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much marketing out there on, coffee and
Garlic and
garlic
anise
and
and
right,
anise, or all that different kinds of
right.
stuff.
And what really works? What do the fish want? And that's our goal today is to bring that to you to see, what fish can actually taste, what they like to taste, what they can smell, what they like to smell.
And
So,
I was talking to you know Joe, who's an old fisherman that I've known for a long time. He's been fishing his whole life. Before this, we started recording this. I asked him, "What do you like? What kind of scents do you use?" And he was telling me, garlic and stuff like that. But um, the issue that I run into, that I think most people run into, is no one can answer why. Like, why do people use garlic? Why is garlic a huge part of the industry, right?
yeah,
Like, I don't know. I mean, I know now, but
right.
I think that understanding the why behind a lot of this is super, super important. So why don't we do something similar to what we did last time, which is just I'll do kind of, we can have a discussion about smell,
Okay,
and then you can do taste. All right.
great.
And by the way, for all of our 8 listeners out there, Sam and I refrain from talking with each other about this. We do our independent research, and then we don't talk to each other about this. So more than anything, we're learning together about this.
Yep,
So,
yep.
okay, so just focusing on smell, like I guess conceptually, smell travels through water through a process called diffusion,
Okay.
okay, where odor molecules release from a source, and they randomly, or less randomly depending upon current, spread out and mix with other water molecules, allowing that scent to be detected by organisms in the water, like fish, um, who have the abilities to detect those particular odors. Um, they'll drift, those particles will drift through the water until they reach like a sensory organ, like a or olfactory bulb, which is the scientific term for pretty much the nose of a fish
Right.
or whatnot. So just some I think a question that I came into this not really knowing is how truly sensitive is a um, bass's sense of smell, right? I mean, we know that, well, at least I think everybody assumes that they can smell, but the science confirms that fish absolutely can smell. Um, a bass, they wanted to determine, scientists wanted to determine how strong their sense of smell was. There was an article published, "Smell and Taste: How Do Bass Use These Senses to Feed?" that was written by a journalist named Steve Quinn in 2021. That was based off of scientific research conducted by Dr. Keith Jones, who has his PhD in fish olfactory from Texas A&M,
That's crazy.
who is the head scientist at Berkeley's Fish Lab in Spirit Lake, Iowa.
Oh, that's
Okay,
cool.
so he's done all these different kinds of studies
Right.
and stuff like that. But the point in it is that a bass can detect just a couple ounces of scent or amino acids, and we'll get into that later, mixed into 6,000 gallons of water. Okay,
Wow.
so conceptually,
Wow.
I wanted to get an idea of
How
how many
big that
gallons was
is,
six,
right?
and if your standard hot tub, it would be 20 of your standard hot tubs. I forget the count, the specific count of
Right.
how many gallons, but imagine
Fairly large pool.
that's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pool,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
And so they have a very sensitive olfactory bulb, Um, so there was a really, really interesting study that was done that tells us just how strong the scent is and how fish can apply it. All right. So there was in addition to this sensitivity study that was conducted by Keith Jones, there was a actual experiment that was conducted by that there. The title of the experiment was an experiment test in season homing mechanisms used by nest guarding male largemouth bass following displacement. That was conducted by Catherine DeFlora out of the Department of Biology in Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. It's actually, I think, the same lab that conducted one of the studies on color that we talked about last time.
Okay.
So the primary goal of this study was to determine the sensory mechanisms and the height or importance that fish use those mechanisms, specifically in their ability to navigate back to a spawning nest
Okay.
post displacement. So this is different in that it's not focusing on their use of scent to eat, but it
Right.
just is a study on how
Well, they use
how
their
how well
nose.
they use it and how important it is to them, right?
Yeah.
So what they did is I can't remember exactly how many fish they took. I want to say it was over 30 or so. But what they did is they found a bank essentially where these males were guarding their nests. All right. And they grouped them into three groups. And each group was deprived of what biologists determined was an important um, biological skill to navigate. So, one group, they took away their vision. One group, they took away their magnetic field ability, whatever you want to call that, which is something that I had no idea about, which we'll probably want to look into more. And the third was their scent. The way they did this is for the vision. They used denture cream, probably what you know a lot about.
I use that many times.
They use denture cream, which I guess is non-toxic to the fish and will dissolve.
Yep.
And they'd put denture cream over their eyes, over a group. They would literally use denture cream to glue a magnet onto their heads for the magnetic field group, and then they would use Vaseline that they would inject into their nose holes,
Yeah.
so much so until it came out the other nose hole, right? And then they would take those fish, they would take them off of their nests, and they would take them in a straight line 200 meters out into the lake. Okay. And they were testing what percentage of the deprived fish could make it back
Okay.
200 meters. All right. After 2 hours, 100% of the visually impaired fish, blind, made it back to their nests.
Wow.
After 2 hours, the magnetically impaired fish, 64% of them made it back, but by 4 hours, 91% of them made it back. Okay?
That's pretty crazy.
Out of the smell impaired fish, after 2 hours, 27% of them made it back. And after the full 4 hour period, only 63% of them made it back.
Barely over half.
So that's 100% for a fish who was blind to 63% to a fish that could see but could not smell. Right? So that just, I mean, to me, that says a lot about their ability and the importance of their sense of smell. And I think that, going back to the study that we looked at last week, the seeing red,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, uh, that study showed us that fish were trained and could be trained to identify colors that were seemingly identical to them through the aid of smell.
Scent. Yeah.
And without it, they could not differentiate certain colors, right?
Right.
So critically important sense to them, right? So I guess why does this matter? Like where does this come into play with our type of fishing products and all that stuff?
Right.
Well, what it tells me is, first of all, scent is critical. They absolutely use scent to hunt. They can sense scent, they can smell things. And so the obvious question becomes, well, what do they care about most? Right. And I think a lot of this probably goes into taste. So I'm going to do my best to stay out of this. But, and this is where I think it's so interesting with industry stuff. Fish cannot smell or taste oil or oil based products.
Right.
They
Right.
can't.
I found that very interesting too. Is I'm
Super
like,
interesting.
oh, how many times have I bought
Well,
cans
for
and
those watching,
cans?
like think about this stuff right here. Bang, I've got probably 5 cans in the boat right now. And I have been convinced that the combo is the best one, because I've
Yeah.
used the shadow and
Well,
I've
well,
used the
you
crop one.
spray it on one time, and then you get bit within 10 seconds on a fluke reasoning,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, that made a
Yeah.
difference.
And so this was a study that was conducted, albeit it was conducted by Berkeley Labs, and I have something to say about that here in a little bit about all of these companies doing this research, right? But what they're saying is that oil-based scents are derived from super purified oil fractions, oily like fractions of processed natural foods like
Right,
herring and
right,
shad and
right.
crawfish and things like that are primarily composed of fatty compounds renowned for their insolubility in water. In other words, think about if anybody's ever used this stuff, Bang or Chompers or other oil-based scents. What's the first thing you notice when you put your lure in the water?
It's just dispersed
It's
on
an
top
oil
of the
slick.
water.
It's like the
Yeah,
BP oil spill.
yeah.
It's because it's insoluble. You pour olive oil into water. You pour gasoline onto water. It always stays on top because it is insoluble to water. And so even small droplets that are released from an oily attractant, the as you are fishing it, that might stay on the bait, they just rise to the top. They just
Yeah,
rise to the
eventually, because they're
surface.
trying to separate from the
And
water.
so all this to say is that bass can only detect water soluble scents. Now there is a time and a place. I think that there might be a time and a place to use oil based scents like Bang. And this research shows that this stuff is really good for masking human scent. So if for whatever reason you've got sunscreen on your boat and you're using sunscreen,
Mm,
obviously you want to scrub your hands as best as you can, right? Because they say that sunscreen or like bug spray or
yeah,
gasoline,
it's the DEET and the PABA
yeah, really
that are
not good.
both water soluble.
Yeah, both water soluble. And
Yeah,
if you spray your stuff with a oil based attractant, it can help mask that, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not offensive. It's only defensive,
yeah.
right?
I read a review on the Bang from one of the guys who seemed fairly knowledgeable on the fact of being water soluble versus oil based, and he's like, I have used Bang for a while, come to realize it doesn't help much if you're just spraying it on right before you're throwing your lure in the water.
Right.
But if you were to soak your lures in Bang for at least a week, it can infiltrate some of the baits and stick onto them. But like you said, when that gets released,
It's
that's
just
not just dispersing around the bait. It's sitting in its oil-based form, floating to the top.
yeah.
So how much of that is totally true? How
It's
much is that just
yeah.
protecting his fingers from expecting the scent on the bait?
I totally agree. I
Who
totally
knows?
agree. Now, this is where if you're someone who uses baits that are pre-soaked in oil, or if you are someone who uses stuff like Bang or Chompers, you might be asking yourself, well, um, what could I use, right? And that's when you start getting into these water-based solutions. Now, we're not that anybody really cares, but we're not promoting any of these products. But like stuff like bait fuel, right? Bait fuel came out like what 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
took the market by storm because they had all this, you know, research and development, so to say, really good marketing about how water soluble uh, scent solutions can actually be sensed and tasted by fish. And that's true. And one of the main things that are in water soluble baits, like bait fuel, like, Berkeley Gulp, or specifically, Power Bait Max Scent, is amino acids. Okay. I don't know why. I couldn't get to the bottom of that. But amino the amino acid is a critical component for the fish being able to detect the scent in the water. I don't know why.
Definitely.
I don't know why. But all of these products, these water soluble products, Berkeley products, Power Bait products, have those amino acids in them. At least they say that they
Right.
do. One thing that I think is really interesting, we actually did chat about this a little bit, is that because scent is such a, I think, area where the industry could run away with, like Berkeley has, so much of the research is hidden. It's behind closed doors.
Right. If you look on any website, it's almost impossible
It's
to
almost
find
impossible.
what's in these
Right,
scents,
right. I mean, it's
or
all proprietary
attractants,
trade secret information. And so, sure, Berkeley Labs can say, well, we study this stuff for years and years and years and years. And same with
Yeah.
Bait Fuel, they can make a really cool YouTube video, but it's like, okay, well, let's actually put pen to paper. Tell me what's going on. No idea. I can't look at their methods. I can't look at the way that the way they're conducting their research. I know that Berkeley Labs at any given point can have a couple thousand bass at their facility. I don't know what they're doing with them. And all I can say is, like, the researchers come out and say, we really spent a lot of time on this. This is really good stuff. Yeah, it's like,
Right. But
okay,
then as a consumer, as a fisherman, they have nothing to fight against. They have nothing they're going against that's pushing them to get that out there.
exactly right.
Right? Because what's the other alternative between Berkeley? It's Bait Fuel's the other
Big one.
really big one that's
Yeah.
pushing the limits with them. So people are going to go buy Berkeley or Bait Fuel scents or taste attractants.
Totally.
And they don't have to. They just have to put out a very cool video that's like, hey, we studied this hard, and you should buy our product.
And you should trust us.
Right. Right.
So, a few more like random things here. Thinking about the implications of scent in bass, we know that bass have the ability to remember things, have memory.
Yes.
Clearly, that was shown in the study about colors.
Right.
And so, I mean, that goes into so many different things. Pressure, a lot of people like to talk about right now with forward-facing sonar being such a hot topic, about bass hearing that sonar click.
Yeah.
Right? Like bass can remember that. You hear that click, that's a problem. Right? You hear a boat motor, that's a problem. We focus a lot about memory with sounds, right? Or lure presentation. A lot of people don't talk about that with scent. But clearly,
Yeah.
bass can form memories as it relates to biological triggers like scent. And so, to me, I really am going to try to focus moving forward, not only on using things like water-based scents, but really being careful about, I need to wash my hands. I need to make sure that my hands are clean. And I saw some video, or I can't remember who it was, talking about how it's advantageous that when you get out on the lake, dip your hands in the lake, scrub your hands in lake water, and get that scent off of you, because just like a fish who has seen a spinnerbait come through time after time after time again, that scent, human scent, possesses a unique smell to it. And it's like, get that off of you, right? Think about your gloves. Think about all the fishing gloves, the sun gloves that we use. Wash them, and wash them without detergent, right? Like, wash them in just hot water and get whatever scent sweat that we have on. How many times do we a
Yeah,
year do you,
that's a really good point.
how many
Because
times do you wash your gloves? Yeah,
detergent's water soluble. That's how
exactly
it
right.
works.
Exactly
It's gonna
right.
disperse in the
Think about
water.
how many times a year you wash your fishing gloves. Never.
Yeah,
Those things
very
are
few.
crusty. Crusty. And so I'm just saying, like, not only can we think about scent as a way to work offensively for us, but we have to be careful about not letting it be against us. Right? I
That's
mean,
a good point.
we're
That's a good
careful
point.
enough about other things. It
Yeah,
should be something, being
quiet.
quiet and turning sonar off when we're not using it.
Right.
Add scent to the list of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is
Very good.
weird. Not that this really makes a difference on any of our stuff, but I thought it was interesting. Did you know that China consumes, like, they have farms for largemouth, and they consume it as a primary protein in the Chinese diet, is largemouth bass?
I did not know
Yeah.
that.
And
That's
so
crazy.
there are
Quit killing our bass.
of these studies on largemouth bass coming out of China about scents as it relates to them eating.
Human taste?
No. Well, about, like, what kind of food pellet are the bass most interested in eating, so we can make them grow bigger,
Right.
and
Right.
we get
Yeah.
more meat off of
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
And one of those, there are lots of studies about that. I read. I mean, let me see if I can't find. Try to give credit to the studies that we use. I'm going to be able to pronounce some of this. Um,
Right.
a lab out of the lab in tropical and subtropical fishery resource application and cultivation, a study that was done. This was in 2023, published in 2023, about the dietary um, attenuates of of largemouth bass. I'll try to pronounce the main author, Hung Yen Lee. So if anybody
Nice.
wants to go read that, they can. Um, anyways, what I saw across a lot of these studies that are focused on cultivating largemouth bass for food, there's a common chemical that came up, which is this chemical or substance called betamine,
Yeah.
Betaine. Sure as hell, or sure as shit, you can buy that stuff in powdered form. And you know who uses it? It's carp fishermen.
Yeah, they have done a lot of research on carp. I've noticed that when we were, looking up our bass stuff,
Yes,
carp, for some reason, they want to know.
guys in Europe who really are trophy carp anglers buy that powder. Right now, we use powder, this bite powder, this Nori's bite powder, EBI stuff. Just like with Berkeley and bait fuel, you can't figure out what's actually in this stuff. But it
Right.
makes me wonder if this betanine or beatine or whatever is in this stuff, And I've honestly
Well,
thought about buying some of that stuff because it's super cheap, and it's proven that bass are attracted to it. And it's like,
I
I don't
will
know.
say
What do you think
I've
about?
had I during my research on taste, there has been some conflicting results on betaine or
Oh, really?
however you say that, and I would caution the reader to know that carp are straight plant eaters, bottom
Sure,
feeders,
sure,
not carnivores
correct,
like bass, which makes a big difference in the taste buds. If you think about why amino acids you're saying are making such a big difference, it's because amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. What do fish need, to survive, to grow?
sure, sure.
Proteins. What is in the muscles of all these fish they're eating? Amino acids that build proteins,
Right,
right?
right, right,
Not carp,
right.
So there could be some difference there. Not saying it's not a fish
Totally,
attractant,
totally.
not saying it couldn't work,
Yeah.
but there are some
No, you're
differences
absolutely right.
to why
You're absolutely right.
people say amino
And
acids can make such a big difference.
a lot of those studies that were coming out of China about that was a big part of it. You
Right.
know,
Right.
um, one of the last things that I'll say here, I think that is really important to think about in terms of finding a product that will help the average angler, because that's why we care. That's why we're doing all this stuff. Is what can we do to be better anglers, catch more fish?
Yep.
Is think about what the soft plastics are actually made out of. Most soft plastics are made out of PVC, which is an oil derived plastisol. Okay.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're not water soluble. And that's fine because you don't necessarily want something that is exclusively water soluble, because anytime you pull it out of the water,
It's gonna break apart.
well, it turns into a rock.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what Berkeley Gulp is, though. Like all this stuff right here, that's soaking in juice, is completely water soluble. Now, there's pros and cons to that. Huge pro, is that because the plastic itself is water soluble, it's a sponge.
Right.
It's a sponge.
Right.
Whereas if you go and buy a Senko from Yamamoto, it's not a sponge. You cannot pass scent through it, right? And
Yeah.
that's where a product like Max Scent is kind of interesting. Again, they won't tell you exactly what this stuff is made out of, but they have found somewhat of an in between, that there is some degree of solubility in Max Scent, but it is still an oil based product,
Sure.
that because it doesn't dry up. It doesn't dry up, right? But you can
Yeah.
soak it without them swelling a bunch. And I did do some reading that if you were to soak like a Max Scent bait in juice, like
Uh
gulp
huh.
juice, it'll swell up. It'll swell up.
Interesting. I mean, I have noticed, fishing with their drop shot stuff, on Table Rock, that you pull one of those baits out of the water and you leave on your front deck for a day versus you leave, uh,
Robo
a
worm.
robo worm, yeah, that we use a lot out. The robo worm is going to be very useful the second day, where the
Right.
max scent is going to be like, I don't know if I want to throw that again. That's getting,
Well, exactly right.
crusty
And
and
that's why there's,
not as limp and
if you use a product like that, you're going to want to put it back in the juice,
right.
I do think though that soaking baits is a way to really set yourself apart. And this is where I think that we might have an interesting angle. We make soft plastics, and one of the main reasons I have wasted no less than probably $100 worth of soft plastics that I have bought, and then I have been like, oh yeah, let's soak these. Kitech, all different kinds of nice plastics, and they swell up. 6th Sense stuff, it all swells up and deforms and gets all nasty.
Okay.
I've done that with the soft plastic that you and I make,
Yeah.
and we're just buying generic plastisol off of Amazon. They don't swell up. I'm going, why is that the case? It's because they don't have salt in them, right?
Yeah. Or this oil,
Well, I
the
mean,
oil
I think that
base
PVC stuff or the stuff that we buy
is oil
is
based.
oil based,
Right.
but I think salt plays a big role in that stuff swelling up.
Definitely. I mean, that's what salt does in your body too.
Yeah. And so I think that if you're wanting to soak baits, try to find stuff without salt, which I think could be a really interesting angle to take with scent. Because I read one study that said that there was a small, negligible increase in amount of fish caught with baits that had salt versus those that don't. So little that I don't think it truly makes a difference. Now, salt has a role in terms of weight, I think, a lot of times,
Right.
but I don't think it's going to do much for you scent wise. I really
How it
don't.
falls is the movement of the
Yeah,
bait.
yeah, yeah.
Salt can play into all
But like you see stuff that's like super,
that.
super salt.
Hmm.
That's not going to compel me to buy a product anymore, at least for scent reasons.
Right.
Action maybe, but I would be really interested in running some experiments with soaking baits, non-salted baits in like gulp, in bait fuel, in different liquids. Because I mean, look at Takahiro, who's a
Yeah.
Japanese pro angler. I mean, like he blew up and won 2 Bassmaster events last year back to back using his Echo Gear, EBI bite juice with Nori's bite powder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's coincidental. I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely something to say about scent that can make a difference. But we just wish that they would come out and let us know what's in some of these powders or
I, yeah,
juices that
yeah,
actually are making the difference,
yeah.
right? But
So
that we'll never know.
before we pass it over to you, I just, for anybody listening, I think the big takeaway here for scent is that if you're going to learn anything from this, is that scent absolutely matters, 100%. You should be regularly dipping your baits in some type of scent, and you need to make sure that whatever you're using is water soluble.
Yeah,
There are
that's the
lots of
biggest
stuff.
part.
That's the biggest part.
No.
There's a lot of stuff out there that's oil derived, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's water based. I personally, out of the research I've done, it seems that Berkeley does have the most water soluble product out there. I think bait fuel is a good alternative, but long story short, you need to be using water soluble plastics if you can, and you need to be soaking them in some type of water soluble scent. It makes a significant difference.
Yeah,
So that's scent.
I agree. All right, let's talk about taste. So, I got a lot of my research from the University of Florida. They did a study on the co-localization of taste buds and teeth in the pharyngeal jaws of largemouth bass. So first off, starting with the anatomy of taste buds, where they're at, how many are there, that type of thing is kind of what I first wanted to understand. You know, to know like how much of a difference that taste could really make.
Sure.
So in the upper jaw, they have three major tooth pads behind like the tongue area. So when you look, you look into a bass's mouth, you're going to see the tongue. Behind the tongue is like the pharynx area, and that's a lot of where this study was conducted to see like the taste buds in that area, how they reacted to certain things and stuff like that. So they have three major tooth pads on each side of the midline behind the tongue in the bass's mouth. And on the lower jaw, they have one pad on each side of the midline behind the tongue.
Oh wow.
All these pads contain teeth. It's part of the way that they break down their food back there behind the tongue. Around each of these micro teeth that they have is usually 3 or 4 taste buds.
Wow.
So just think like you like rub your hand on the tongue of a fish, like a spotted bass or something, and you feel, how rough that is. Those are all teeth in there. And around each one of those little teeth are often taste buds that are sending signals,
So
to
lots
the
of taste
brain.
buds is what you're saying.
So a ton of taste buds.
I had
So
no idea.
not only are the taste buds localized there, but they're also found on their gill arches,
Oh,
on their tongue, and on their lips.
wow.
So
Everywhere.
everywhere that bass touches a bait, like immediate response from the lips, the taste. And then if it gets it past its tongue, because it
Still
accepts
more.
it, it's still analyzing the taste of the bait.
Wow.
Okay, so taste is obviously a major factor in if the fish will eat or not. Okay, that's first thing to say, is that taste buds make a big difference for the fish. So in this study, what they looked at 16 bass. Okay, I know that's not a very big, population size to look at, but that's what they decided to do. And they acclimated these fish for 3 weeks. They fed them live goldfish several times once they got them in the tank for 3 weeks to help get them used to their area, the tank, feeding with an observer in front of them,
Sure.
all these different things. They were fed goldfish until 12 of them were eating it immediately in the presence of an observer.
Okay.
So they ended up going through this study with 12 bass, is what it kind of comes down to.
Okay.
They were then presented with fish fillets and shrimp, non-living, continually until the fish were readily accepting the non-living food. So
Okay.
this is them trying to wean them off of live
Live,
goldfish, right, to eating something that they would normally eat, but it's
but it's
dead,
dead.
right? To them trying to get to the food balls is where it
Oh
kind of
wow.
ends
So it's
up.
all the way. Okay. Sure. Sure. Sure.
So they're trying to get
Creating a
to this
pattern.
certain point to where they feel comfortable that these fish are responding how they should be responding.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So I think they did this really well with this study. The food balls were then presented on a monofilament line.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So kind of interesting, kind of similar to
Yep.
fishing,
Yep.
right? You
Yep.
have that line, so the line's not affecting a whole lot of
Yep.
things here. The food balls were then filled. So some of them were just a non-taste receptive material to fish. I can't remember exactly what the material they used.
Bang.
It was yeah, bang, yeah. But it was something that fish did not taste. It was had no effect on their taste buds.
Okay.
Just visual cues, obviously, if they ate it or not ate it, how it affected when it went in their mouth, type of
The
thing.
control.
Yeah, it was their control group.
Okay.
And then they had food balls that had diced fish and shrimp extract that they entered into this equation.
Diced fish and shrimp extract.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. So then they would only test fish that actively ate a goldfish on that day. Okay. So the actively eating fish. So they would, put a goldfish in there, see if they would eat.
Right.
And then if they'd eat, then they would test them.
Okay.
Okay. So no,
A hungry fish.
Yeah. So know that the fish wasn't just
Active.
like not wanting to eat that day.
They wanted something
It
active.
wasn't because of what they're putting in front of them.
Right.
So then they looked at the food balls, and if they were inhaled or rejected or inhaled and swallowed. Okay.
This is very similar to the bait fuel kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very similar, and I think they copied a lot of what this study did.
Okay.
Because of how well they were able
Sure.
to like create their controls and
Sure.
stuff. So then they looked at how they were injected. I mean, how they were inhaled and rejected, or inhaled and swallowed, and then the swallowing step of the goldfish that they made sure to make very well known in their study was once they swallowed the goldfish, it was always preceded with some kind of ejection of scales from their operculum. So like from behind their gill plates, once they swallowed a goldfish, you'd always see some goldfish scales or some material come out of the sides of their gills. Okay.
Okay.
So that kind of
Indicates to them
indicated that's a swallow
they're actually, yeah,
in eating.
got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So the food balls with the shrimp stimulant extract were inhaled as frequently without the shrimp extract were inhaled as frequently as those with the shrimp extract in them. Okay.
Okay, so the shrimp extract made no difference in their inhalation.
And them taking it in their mouth.
Okay.
Okay. But here's where the difference comes in.
I think I know this.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all about the taste here, right? And not
Right.
about what it looks like.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
they're taking that in. It says they believe this is because the bass instinctually hunts the moving food ball that's dropped into the tank. Okay, not
Makes
because
sense.
of the scent or the
It's the
taste
movement.
of it, right? It's the movement and just the
Yep.
reaction of the bass.
Yep.
Okay, the difference was 85% of the food balls with high concentration, 90% of it being shrimp extract,
Yeah.
were swallowed. The other food balls that did not have any shrimp extract in it,
were rejected.
0 of them were swallowed.
Wow. What percentage you say were swallowed?
85%
85 compared to 0.
compared to 0.
Wow.
So if that
So
doesn't say something about
EBI shrimp
shrimp
powder,
extract
shrimp extract.
making a difference in them swallowing, I don't know what is, because that's some very
Wow.
very high
That's
level
clear.
information on this makes a difference, right? For them swallowing it.
Water soluble, I'm obviously.
Obviously it's shrimp extract.
Yeah.
So they say shrimp extract. They didn't go into what shrimp extract is, but you can assume, from what a shrimp is made out of, it's amino acid, it's the nucleotides,
Sure.
it's all that.
Sure.
That's making the difference from what they found in other studies.
Sure. Very obviously
Okay.
same tree as
Right.
crawfish,
Right.
So
Right. Yep. So I will say the average rejection time was about 3 seconds. I think that's good information to have.
3 seconds without.
Without
Okay.
the shrimp.
Okay.
So you get bit, you got 1, 2, 3, and that's gone.
Well, I actually
Right.
read something that said something very different, which is that bass have the capability to, once they, and this was, I didn't get into this much because this is more of the taste thing, that once they take something in, that they can make that determination within 0.25 seconds. Think about how many times you've been fishing a jig and you feel boom, boom, and you
Yeah.
literally just go, there's nothing I can even do.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do.
No, there's some truth to that. And there may be some kind of discrepancy in this study where the fish has been fed a food ball that has shrimp in it, and they're like, "Oh, does this have the shrimp in it?"
Right.
There can be multiple factors,
more.
right? Because they're trying to figure out, is
Yeah.
this what I'm trying to eat?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're in a cage. And
Yeah.
there's a bunch of alternative
Totally.
factors that can play into this. But the average rejection time was 3 seconds.
Okay.
So, give or take,
That's
it's
still
still
not
a
a lot
short
of time.
amount of
That is
time.
short.
Because you may not feel it initially
On a long cast,
and it's in their mouth and it's gone.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
So, just from this, they kind of came to the conclusion that this shows that taste has a major factor in how long a bass will hold a lure in its mouth and then potentially swallow it.
Right.
If it, tastes
right
how they want it to taste.
Yep.
So I found that kind of interesting,
Well,
with
super
a
interesting.
lot of our baits, are scented in, things that bass cannot necessarily differentiate or like.
Right.
Right. So like how much of a difference is, the coffee scent or the Missile Bait's weird licorice scent, actually making a difference,
Right.
and that the bass can't even recognize what that scent is because it's not built up of the amino acids, of the nucleotides,
For
of
sure.
inosine 5 monophosphate, all these different things that the bass can, taste,
Right.
and make a difference.
One of these, I think one of the things that I read from this Keith Jones guy was talking about how this seems obvious once you say it, but I don't really think about this that often, that bass obviously don't have hands, just like a dog. What is any animal going to do when it's curious or wants to make a determination? Like, think they pick it up.
Yeah.
But think about any time you hear a shark attack with a surfer, right? Well, why did they bite it? Well, they're biting it because they're curious. And why do they not finish? Because they realize that it's not a seal, it's a surfboard, right? Well, the same is true with bass, right?
Yeah.
Is that we don't realize how frequently a bass will go and pick something up purely for investigative reasons, not out of hunger, not out of defensiveness, out of what is this? And it is the presence of those water soluble amino acids and certain other, chemical compounds that will tell a fish once they pick it up out of curiosity, hey, this is edible. I'm going to hang on to this. And clearly the study that clearly shows that.
Right.
And that's the big selling point for a lot of this stuff is, yes, a water soluble soft plastic with scent in it will create what they call a scent field that will attract fish, right? Especially in current. But what is even more important about the presence of scent is a fish holding on,
Right.
because it gives you, think about
And
if,
that's where taste comes in.
exactly right.
Right.
That's where that's all about taste. Think
Right.
about if, whether it be 0.25 or 3 seconds, if you increase that from 3 to 5 seconds,
To them swallowing
or to them swallowing it,
it.
or I mean,
Obviously, you don't want them to
that's
swallow it,
between a
but
catch and not.
right.
That, I mean, that is huge. Even if it was 1 second more, right? Even if it was half a second more, and I just think about,
Yeah.
God, how
Yeah.
easy is it to be lazy with scent?
Oh, I mean,
So easy to be lazy.
like it's got scent on it. It's coming out of the package. It just
Yeah,
smells
yeah.
okay.
Like
It
I
looks
mean, I
good.
won't be using Bang anymore, but like I literally have a cup holder at the bow of the boat, and I would set it out and be like, "You're gonna use scent,"
Oh,
and I never use it.
I mean, my bait fuel that I used to have, I think I used like maybe an eighth of it, and then it
Right.
turned brown over
Same,
2 years.
same. Mine turned brown too. That's why I got this new stuff.
Right.
But um, it's just so important. It is so important.
Yeah.
I will never ever fish without some type of water soluble scent on it ever again.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, and it's going to be a thing of routine, and you
It
getting
will be.
yourself used to that, and you're obviously going to throw lures in the water that don't have it, and you're gonna be like, oh, I need to put that on there, right? And
Yep.
you're going to remember, and then eventually it's going to start making the difference for you, and you're going to not have to think about it ever again. It's just become second nature, right? And
Yes.
that's the goal to obviously creating those habits to become better
Yes.
fishermen,
Yes.
right? And I think that these studies have shown us that it can make a difference, and we definitely should be doing that. I have a few other things here. I read a couple other studies, very very in-depth studies on certain things that can enhance the tastes in bass.
Oh, okay.
um
Shrimp powder, obviously.
shrimp
I
powder,
don't know where you get
obviously.
that. I mean, I guess this is the stuff. This is the only
Right.
stuff I know
You
of.
would think, that nori's powder could make a difference. Obviously, you don't know what in it. Is it really shrimp powder? Is it just baby powder you're putting on your
This is baby powder. Well, I can
bait?
tell you right now that it's winning Bassmaster Opens
Yeah. So, I mean,
or Bassmaster Elite
that's
tournaments.
the hardest part with everything that we're coming down to, talking about here is you don't truly know what's in these things, but you can assume water soluble, maybe some shrimp extract, can make some differences. You might as well try them. Is ten
Yeah,
dollars worth, a chance of you winning catching a couple extra fish, winning a tournament?
yeah,
Obviously,
I would do it. Yep.
right. So I read this article on citrate ions and how they enhance the taste responses to amino
Is this one I
acids.
sent you?
Yes, and this one was so
It's a
hard
dense
to
one.
read. This one was very
There's some
dense.
there are some really
Um,
dense studies on all that stuff.
very very scientific study. I did my best to kind of weed through it here and kind of tell you like kind of what they did, kind of how they did it, how they did the study, and what kind of came out of it. I'm not going to go into everything because it was very very hard to understand.
Yeah.
But what they did is they took a couple bass, they put them in tanks, they gave them some kind of anesthetic and immobilized them, sitting them on a block. I think something was holding them there. They cut into their brain area, extracted their glossopharyngeal nerve, which is the nerve that takes the taste receptors from their mouth and sends it to their brain. They connected like cords to these nerve bundles that then sent responses to these machines
Yeah.
that would evaluate how the taste affected the nerve, and the
Sure.
nerve
Sure.
sent response.
Sure.
Okay, so very, very in-depth study that these guys did
Yeah.
here. And what they found was that citrate anions, or citric acid, which can be found in your fruits like
Yeah.
lemons and things like that.
I
When
read something similar. Limonene
yeah,
is one of those essential oils that people try to use.
so that's why, is because of these citric acid
Yeah.
that comes out of
That's
them.
why people use garlic, by the way. Is
That's
garlic triggers
the
those
citric
same
acid stuff.
responses. Yes.
Okay, so the citric acid, when um, used in conjunction with certain amino acids like arginine, L-arginine, D-arginine, lysine, certain things
Yep.
like that,
Yep.
which are naturally found in the bait that bass eat, it had an enhanced effect on those amino acids, and the fish ate it more often.
Okay.
Okay, so there are certain things that we can find that make a difference, right? That affect
Sure.
these.
Sure.
There's another study I read on inosine 5 monophosphate that it wasn't directly on bass, but on teleost fish, which are obviously the
Yep.
same
Yep.
same subfamily of
Yep.
as bass. They found that these nucleotides, which are the building blocks for DNA and RNA
Yep.
within all of these fish that the bass are eating on, um, found an enhancatory effect on how often the fish ate as well, and a little bit on growth. But that was kind of up in the air on if growth really made a difference because it was such a minute
Right.
effect. But they did eat it more often. So there are certain things that science is starting to figure out that can enhance, how long a bass is eating, how much a bass is eating, how long it's holding in its
For
mouth,
sure.
all these different things. And this effect, the inosine 5 monophosphate study was by Asep Ridwanuddin, and the citrate ions was from K Aguagua. So
Okay. Aguagua.
yeah, so both very cool studies. A lot
Yeah.
in these studies, but from a surface level, there are things that affect how well or how long or how much a bass is going to eat, based on nucleotides being or amino acids. I think the main thing that I kind of draw from this is if these bait fuel makers or Berkeley, scent
Yeah.
makers, taste makers are ever going to release, part of what they are putting in these things, I think they should be very direct with if it's nucleotides, what nucleotides,
Yeah.
if it's amino acids, what
What
amino
amino
acids,
acids?
because there's certain amino acids obviously that fish eat more than others because they're
Totally.
in those bait fish,
Totally.
but they could say on their account, we put amino acids in here. They could be
Which they
amino,
kind of do, but
to an extent, but they're not going to be specific because they don't want
sure.
other
They don't want
companies to know
competition.
that.
Yeah.
But are they amino acids that even affect? Because there's 20 different amino acids, 4 different nucleotides. They could be just taking the easiest one, putting it in there, and saying,
Yep.
"I got amino acid, I got nucleotide
Yep.
here."
Yep.
So I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns out there in the fishing industry, but very service level. There are things that can affect the fish's taste. There are things that can affect the fish's scent.
Yep.
Why would you not try
I completely agree.
it?
The you were talking about these different like citrus and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, this will be the last article that I'll talk about. I read this one out of China from 2022. It was called "The Effects of 3 Feed Attractants on the Growth, Performance, and Meat Quality of the Largemouth Bass." Which, by the way, I think I mentioned this. They China eats 600,000 tons of bass a year, which is crazy. But anyways, just to reinforce what you were saying, there was a chemical called limonene, which is an aromatic compound in essential oils commonly used for food additives obtained from oranges, grapefruits, and lemons. There's another chemical called allicin, which is an important biologically active sulfur containing organic compounds extracted from the bulbs of garlic. And then finally, the biotin. And the studies show that using those in some type of water soluble format do trigger a key feeding um, response in bass. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they're getting that into water solubility. Like the garlic stuff. I've always wondered if that stuff works. It does. It is supported by the science. Now, again, it all comes back to being water soluble, but
Yeah.
that's going to be the biggest thing for
What
me.
about the spike it markers?
Well, right, but again, is that oil derived?
Right, and it probably
It
is.
probably is. It probably is.
Right, so maybe it's not the garlic scent you're getting, but the different coloration on the back of the tail of your worm.
Right,
Right,
right.
you're
It,
getting
it's
a
it
dark and a
certainly
white
cannot
contrast that's
hurt you.
flashing.
That's the thing about the oil is it cannot hurt you.
Yeah,
It will not hurt you. It will mask scent, and so don't be afraid to use oil stuff to mask, but it will not help you. If you want the help, go water soluble, go bait fuel, go Berkeley,
yeah,
other stuff like that.
yep,
So,
yep. Very cool.
alrighty, well, that's a wrap on scent. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
taste same. Never knew they had all those taste buds and made that much of a difference.
I know.
So
And I mean, combining both the color stuff and the scent, I think will be a really interesting 2025. Like seeing the results.
yeah,
You know,
we always try to make a good point to try new things each year. Focus on that. I think
that's
obviously if you focused on these two things, these
that
could be
could
the
be
biggest difference
hugely informative,
that you
hugely
could
informative,
have on
especially on
your
those tough
success.
days. Especially on those tough days.
Right.
I mean, speaking from experience, I can tell you right now, I was out with Katie last summer. We were out fishing worms on the roadbed. Not a bite. Not a bite. Pulled out the bait fuel. Next, both of us, we doubled up. We doubled up again. And I used bait fuel for the next. I had a guy pull up, had another fisherman come up, fish on the roadbed with us, throwing a trick worm. Was not getting bites. Pulled his boat over to us. What are you guys doing? I said, we're using scent and we're
Yeah.
catching fish. Now, that was one time,
Yeah.
but still. So, alrighty.
All right.
That's a wrap on scent. Till
See you
next time.
soon.